Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being with us despite the heat. We'll talk about an important, serious topic. We're going to have some major personalities around this table. The question is to know. So, the official question is fiscal and monetary possibility, impossible coordination. I would like to change this question. Is the monetary policy or monetary policies, have they become the hostages of the budgetary policies? So you all know the deficit of France, but there's not only the situation in France. Germany, it's also difficult. In Great Britain, it's also the case, but I think it's only in Ireland and the Netherlands that the situation is a bit better, let's say. It was what we discussed just now, so I will introduce the people around this table. So, of course, Jean-Paul Paulin, who's the member of the Cercle des Économistes, who will be with you. He will introduce the debates. Next to him, the president of the Bundesbank, Joachim Nagel. Next to you, Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England. Next to him, we have Éric Lombard, former Minister of the Economy and Finance in France. And sitting next to Éric Lombard, we have the Vice Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Karen van Gennep, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So we have very serious people on the left, and in the middle, you have the people who have done the spending, Éric Lombard. And then you have Gabriel Maclouf, who's the governor of the Bank of Ireland. So you're all Francophiles, but you all speak French, understand French, but you will be addressing us in English. I will speak French because it's the rule here at the Cercle des Économistes. So we have translation headsets if needed. But we'll try to address this question here. And it'll be interesting to fit it back into the political context that we have in Europe. So Jean-Paul Paulin for the introduction of the debate. Thank you, Edwidge. So we will talk about a topic that is more practical, more technical than those we had in other sessions today. We'll talk about a world that is not lost. It does a world that has instruments available to facilitate living in this world. So in a nutshell, we're going to talk about how we articulate the regulatory policies, the macroeconomic policies. More specifically, we will talk about the coordination between the monetary policies and budgetary policies, which is an issue that is pivotal, which of course gives rise to important institutional questions as described by Edwige. This relationship between these two policies where one wants to win over the other one. So it's obvious that these two policies are evidently interdependent. When the monetary policy raises its interest rates, this, of course, becomes more costly for the state. There's the cost of the public debt, which rises, and obviously it has an impact on the budgetary balance. You can imagine examples in the other way around, I'm sorry. If they are interdependent, logically they should try to be coordinated if we want to maximize the efficiency or the consistency of the whole politics. It's complicated because we know that the central banks are independent and the central banks are in the hands of the politicians. And what do we do to coordinate? What can we do to coordinate all this? It's possible if we don't do that, one policy hinders the policies of the other, and the other way around. So it's true that this problem is not true in all cases. If I take the most frequent cases, which until now, until let's say 20 years ago, we demand? Well, demand shocks. So in recessions, a lack of demand, a shortage of demand, or overheated activity. In this case, the monetary and budgetary policies can be complementary to meet the challenge of these shocks. No problem, and that's in the world we used to live in. Today, on the contrary, we witness a succession of what we call offer shocks, i.e. shocks that concern the production costs. We think, of course, of the COVID, for example, which led to lockout and to a total disorganization of value chains, and which led to price increases. We talk about the armed conflicts that lead to the increase in the price of raw materials. In this case, the monetary policies cannot really have an impact. The budgetary policies can take the lead because we can act more rapidly, because we can better target our actions, while the monetary policies will be slower in reacting. And so, well, the idea is to put the budgetary policies up front and then asking the other one to accompany. So we have a budgetary dominant. And this is what Edwidge meant to say. Maybe the monetary policy can take the lead over the monetary policies, and so question their independence, in fact. And today we are witnessing in many countries some contest of the independence of central banks. They're questioning the role of the central banks, and it's a major progress that was reached. So what do we do in this case? What can we do in this case? Well, it's roughly what I just said, but we should follow up on the monetary policies with a view to budgetary policies. And it's difficult. So this is the first issue, first problem. But there's one problem that's a bit more complicated that affects the eurozone chiefly, as we have in the eurozone monetary policy, that of the ECB, and which is confronted 21 budgetary policies, which can be going different ways under the influence of budgetary shocks that are themselves very different in substance. In this condition, okay, what can we do in a zone that, well, the economists say it's a monetary zone that is not optimal, i.e. where it's difficult to have a single monetary policy, and on top of that, it doesn't have a federal budget. The federal budget of the eurozone is insignificant. You know, it's very weak compared to what we observe, for example, in the U.S. So what, again, can we do to coordinate monetary policy with 21 budgetary policies? So a big question. Obviously, during this period, there has been, when there were crises and when some countries were faced with difficulties, there were some number of arrangements. There was, for example, the resilience and stability mechanism. Today, you have the next generation program, or new generation program, EU, new generation EU, which are programs aimed at redistribution, having a better redistribution between countries. So doubtlessly not a good thing, but isn't it an incentive for some countries to do worse in terms of budgetary policies? It's an encouragement. There evidently a problem of federal budgets that could not be resolved. with view to Maastricht, in which there is a stability agreement, a growth and stability agreement, which was not always applied and today lacks in credibility. So this is what I wanted to say as an introduction. Thank you very much, Jean-Paul Poulenc. I think you've set the scene of this discussion. We will now go back to the table, ask each and every one to answer this question or to comment on this question, and after that we will try to answer the question, what can we do? In fact, you have a monetary policy faced with 21 budgetary policies, and knowing that you have one specific case in that of Great Britain. Joachim Nagel, President of the Bundesbank, thank you for being with us. A lot of questions to ask you. You know that in France the Bundesbank has always been the actor that is more rigorous, even though today there is a budgetary policy in Germany that is a bit more, not laxist, but a budgetary policy which is more flexible, let's say. My question is, do you feel this push against the independence of central banks, this pressure?
So first of all, thank you very much for showing up on this very hot afternoon here. Thank you so much. The same temperatures like in Frankfurt where the Bundesbank is based. Last week we had 41, so it's a little bit less hot here than in Frankfurt. So nevertheless, I can be very brief on this. I think we have this separation principle. What we are doing in the Governing Council is monetary policy. This is our mandate, is price stability. So I never felt pressure since I'm president of the Bundesbank, this is now for 4 years, that governments came up to me and asked me to do maybe lower rates or something like this. I think it is pretty clear what our mandate is and all what we are doing, and I disagree to a certain extent because I believe it is understood that all what we are doing in the Governing Council is monetary policy. All the instruments that we created during the financial crisis all has to do with our mandate, price stability. So often there's this misperception that maybe one or the other instrument has maybe the purpose to bring, let me say, interest rates or rates for certain bonds down. This is not the case. All what we are doing in the Governing Council is monetary policy. You can think about maybe the current situation where we are confronted with a supply shock. There maybe you can find some, let me say, interaction between monetary policy and fiscal policy. Monetary policy in a situation like that, when you have a supply shock, you have to do what is in your mandate, price stabilization. And fiscal maybe, this is the trade-off in the short run, has to stabilize output. There maybe you can find interaction between fiscal and monetary policy. But when we are conducting monetary policy in the Governing Council, it's not about our countries where we are coming from. It's about the whole eurozone. And the track record of what the euro system achieved over the last 25 years is pretty good. We were close to our 2% target. So the whole work we did in the Governing Council, in my interpretation, is a success story for Europe. And this is the best what you can do for every country in the eurozone, is bringing prices back to the target.
On verra ensuite si justement il
We'll see after where if we can make the mandate of the central bank evolve, if we can broaden the horizon of your objectives. But first of all, we'll continue our roundtable. We'll turn to the governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey's particular situation compared to the eurozone. We've just commemorated or celebrated the Brexit. It's a context a bit different to ours. Can you answer this question on the compatibility between budgetary and monetary policy?
First of all, say what a pleasure it is to be back at this conference in Aix. This is a unique event. There is nothing like this in Britain. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to it. So First of all, I agree with Joachim absolutely exactly on monetary policy, but let me take your lead and see if we can answer develop the answer. And let me make 3 points as to why is the situation difficult. And I think there are 3 areas that make this difficult. One, I think all of us have had a slower growth rate for at least the last 15 to 20 years, since the financial crisis. In the UK, the potential growth rate and the actual growth rate has gone down from 2.5% a year to 1.5% a year. That makes a very big difference in terms of fiscal policy. It makes a difference in terms of monetary policy as well. And the reason for that is lower productivity growth, and that is directly then going through to living standards. So this is why this is so difficult. Secondly, as you said very rightly, we've had a whole series of very big supply shocks: COVID, Ukraine, most recently, obviously, the Middle East. And we've not had gaps between them. That makes the response harder. It makes it much harder to operate counter-cyclical fiscal policy because you're not getting the cycles in the same way. The third thing is that we've got at least, I think, 3 very big structural issues that we're going against in terms particularly of fiscal policy. One is that we've all got aging populations. 2, the defense issue. The post-Cold War defense dividend is over. It's gone back the other way. Thirdly, we're all dealing with climate change and what we need to do. If we had one of those, we would think we were facing a big headwind. We've got 3 of them. So 2 things, what to do? 2 things I would say. One is, I think that we need to get much better at explaining this situation, explaining it to the public, how difficult it is. 2, there has to be an emphasis on growth policy. We have to deliver growth policies because raising the growth level is the best way out of this. It's not easy. In the UK, many governments have been at it for a long time. It doesn't come quickly. You have to just stick at it, and you have to be really determined because there's no question that is the best way out of this.
Merci beaucoup. J'ai déjà beaucoup de questions.
Thank you very much. I have lots of questions to ask you, but we'll continue with the other panelists. Eric Lombard, former Minister of Finance. You are more on the side of fiscal policy, of course. Do you get the feeling sometimes that when you were a minister, there was a kind of compatibility between fiscal policy, especially in France after the different shocks due political and COVID, etc.? Or do you think that you need to have this monetary policy that has to be, in a way, very strict? Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be with you. As I'm realistic, I fully understood that the mandate of the European Central Bank is price stability. That's what they're required to do. And so we have to manage the budgetary fiscal issues for our part. And I would like to take you to think about things in an original. Let's imagine we're English, if the Governor Andrew Bailey will allow me. If we were English, not to mention the world of Shakespeare, we would have inflation of 3%. And you can see my friend, the Governor Edgar Moulin, he's going to faint. No, it's just I'm imagining. And if we had an inflation at 3%, from having prepared 2 budgets myself during a moment of low inflation, that would make a great difference and help to re-establish our healthy accounts. Because although it's happening slowly in the debate, and we know that the indexing elements of some of the pensions, the highest retirement pensions, some of the scales are a very powerful lever without going to think about a blank year, which would affect a lot of people. This would help us to re-establish our accounts. A blank year would be very productive as inflation is very high. If we were British, first of all, we'd have to drink a lot more tea, which I wouldn't like personally, but we could always get used to that. But in addition, we'd have a refinancing cost, the gilt, which last night was at 4.4% over 10 years. With the OAT was at 366. When you have to issue 310 billions of euros of new debt this year, that compensates for the previous advantage. I'll end that thought experiment, which I hope wasn't too painful for you. It is clear that when we are in a difficult fiscal situation, a bit of cash is helping. It's not the role of the European Bank. This is what we voted for, and this is what we have to comply with. A few thoughts finally. In the phase during the 1990s, when we were preparing for the arrival of the euro, which, as you know, took place in the year 2000, we knew, and I'd like to quote a great economist, Daniel Cohen, that a single zone bringing together 21 countries was not suitable at all in order to manage an asymmetrical shock only affecting one country. This could be reunification. All this took place a little bit beforehand, or could be the problems that Greece had before the major financial crisis. So we know, and this is the exact situation France is in now, and the annoying thing is that because of our own management decisions, we are in that situation. After COVID, where most of the European countries had put in place good support policies, and the central banks had put in place support policies as well, which were very useful, except we didn't rectify accounts at the same time as the others. I won't give you the pitch, which you know by heart, of talking about a fiscal situation, but this year again, a little more than, well, a more than 5% deficit, which isn't tenable in over the long term. 5% debt with the level of interest rates is not sustainable. And so we are in political situations which will be very variable and very, very calm next year. We'll have 5 years of adjustment, whereas the monetary policy will not be able to help us. We have to be very clear about that. I don't want to leave any doors open for people to dream about that. Finally, I'd like to say that the adjustment we have to make to be able to get to below 3% in the next 5 years is not such a painful adjustment. That's not the subject of our debate today. It's a question managing a little more balance than a little more rigor than we have done previously, and that will be the subject of another debate than we're having here today. But I think it's an important debate for the presidential debate. If we don't have a consensus about to recover from the situation today, which is very serious, could become even worse. Thank you very much, Eric Lombard. This will no doubt be an important issue in the future. I'd like to carry on your dream. Andrew Bailey said this just before. We need to have a monetary policy which favours growth. Do you think that could be part of your dream, Eric Lombard? A monetary policy that would favour growth. A monetary policy. Sorry, that was a slip of the tongue. Of course. But today, what's favouring growth? I think we can say that between us as people who are from France, and I apologise to my non-French colleagues, the recovery of our accounts has to favour growth, because the recovery of our accounts will reduce our refinancing costs. The spread with Germany is 75 centimes, which is a great deal. And one of our major economic difficulties at the moment is in the world of confidence of the economic stakeholders. When this confidence is re-established, everything moves forward very quickly. Just to say a few words about this. In the last quarter, when we were in office and we had a year 2025, a very vigorous recovery of our deficit. We went to 5.8 to 5.1. The semestrial growth was 0.5. So the predictability of budgetary policy, this is the best thing we can do in order to sustain growth. Thank you for that point. Catherine.
Should support growth. To be clear, what I said was, I agree with Joachim on monetary policy. I said we must have policies that support growth, because without that, all our jobs get a lot harder.
And can I add on what
I was sure. Oui, allez-y.
Go ahead.
Like to say very briefly is that there's a lot of research that the best what you can do when you are doing monetary policy is to achieve price stability. This is the precondition for growth. And just to come back to your point, changing your target, maybe going from 2 to 3, then you're losing trust. Then you're just signaling, okay, you are not happy, you cannot achieve it, now going up to 3%. That would end up in, let me say, in a de-anchoring of inflation expectation. And this is very, very dangerous. So we should stick to our target. This worked well, and it's the best what we can do to really have stable finances in Europe.
Cher
Non, non,
président
on va
Nagel,
continuer, on va continuer.
juste un mot pour être clair, ce n'était pas
Ça
une
y est, le débat est
proposition.
lancé, mais
Just to be clear, it wasn't a proposal, it was just a pedagogical experiment in imagining what might happen. So what's interesting about you is that you're Vice Prime Minister of the Netherlands. You've also worked in the private sector. You're a Minister for Labour. The other thing you're interested in this debate is the impact these monetary policies could have on the citizens and you and on us. That's the angle you have chosen to answer this question of compatibility or not between the two types of policy. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you for inviting me here once again. And it is very hot. I'm going to answer in English.
French is good.
Yeah, but it's d'être précis, c'est plus facile en anglais. I love to talk about money, of course. It's in my DNA. L'argent, c'est partie de mon ADN. But I think we need to talk indeed first about competitiveness and the real challenges that Europe faces today. And that's governmental reforms, and that's social and economic reforms. Monetary policies, in my experience, seem to work quite fine, so let's not touch them. It's the national economic reforms that are stagnating, investments that are stagnating. And I truly believe that monetary policies cannot fix inadequate fiscal policies. If there are no necessary economic reforms, if there are no social new contracts, you have monetary policies to address short-term shocks, but long-term reforms are up to governments and politicians. I don't know if anybody of you talked to Draghi lately. The guy has steam coming out of his ears, literally. He is so impatient now. He has done an excellent analysis of what we need to achieve, and we're not doing it. If you look at our situation today, it's not only the economic growth that we need to get to, and literally if we don't, our prosperity and thus our independence are at risk. We're also, and Andrew said it already, facing multiple challenges at the same time. It's defense and security, geopolitical instability. It's migration plus aging population, so that's demography altogether. And of course, it's climate. It's our exhausted planet. But moreover, we are also facing a European project that's not finished yet. We have not really finished our internal market. We face internal barriers. We have not finished the capital market. And if we would have, we would probably be in a much better place. So we need massive investments in growth and especially in defense, because that's also got to do with our geopolitical stability. We need that capital market union, we need industrial policies, and we need to do something about our energy market reform. That's also an opportunity for Europe. It's not just about gasoline prices, it's about investing in clean, affordable, sustainable energy. That's an opportunity for Europe. But if we look in a mirror, are we actually doing something about it? Country by country, we probably have our Draghi plans, but are we executing them? Do we have cross-border cooperation? Are we actually building those French-German fighter jets? Or are we going to do it country by country? And are we working closely together as businesses with our governments? Also there is a big bridge to cross. So Europe needs to we need to get our act together yesterday. And that's first and foremost about high governmental debts. Not only is that an enormous mortgage for the next generation, and we're already posting an exhausted planet in their lap, it's also going to a larger and larger share of our government expenditures. While we need that money to invest in the future, infrastructure, R&D, you name it. And to be honest, in my experience, a high governmental debt is creating a real imbalance in Europe, in our policy discussions, in our ability to come to common ground. The second thing that we need to reform our social contracts. For far too long, we've said to people, you will have one job at one company for the rest of your life. But we need to talk about employability, about lifelong learning. So that means invest in the 50-year-olds in your organization for new skills before they lose their jobs to AI. And each country needs to perform its real economic reforms. Pension aids in France, part-time work in the Netherlands. And that's the way to increase the pie and not just redistribute it. So grow our economy, invest in technology and innovation, become smarter, instead of leaving it to monetary policies. Let's fix our fiscal policies.
Merci beaucoup. Vous avez raison, c'est presque un autre débat.
Right, it's almost another debate, and we'll have to find solutions. Maybe we have to bring out the Draghi report again, because it was published 2 years ago. Everybody was happy, but for the moment it's not enforced. So Gabriel Maclouf, the Governor of the Bank of Ireland, you heard your colleagues and friends, because I'm under the impression you spend your lives together. You were in Sintra, in Basel. You're always together. So what you heard, do you think that in the end we shouldn't touch the monetary policies as defined today?
Vous tous.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry, I will speak in English. Well,
Is an opportunity because it's a big benefit because I've heard everybody, so I can avoid repeating myself or repeating what they said, but I will repeat a little bit. So I'm going to say two things. Firstly, the actual question, the title of this session, I think, was a coordination between fiscal and monetary policy. Was it impossible? And the answer is no, it's not impossible. And the evidence of that is that we have, by and large, maintained price stability over the last 26, 27, 28 years that we've had the euro. And the important thing to remember is, or to think about, is that we have there's only one macroeconomic framework that we're working within. And that macroeconomic framework has got two big components: monetary policy and fiscal policy. Monetary policy's objective is stability. Fiscal policy's objective is sustainability. So we're very clear in monetary policy that we have to deliver price stability 2% in the medium term. That's our objective. We're committed to it, and I think everyone in this room, everyone listening, knows that we are committed to it and that we will deliver it. Fiscal policy, as I said, its job is sustainability. And in the euro area, we have the Stability and Growth Pact as revised a few years ago. Essentially, that requires the same level of commitment. That requires 21 countries to commit to work within a set of rules in the same way that the central bank is committed to delivering on its rule. And I think if that happens, you get the macro economic framework that we need to work. So the second thing I'm just going to come on to now is, and I will repeat what Joachim said a few minutes ago, price stability is the foundation for economic growth. And I think the extent that you need or want coordination, I think what you need is to make sure that you are delivering price stability and that fiscal policy delivers sustainability, and that structural reforms can then work to actually build growth. And if I can just take just a slight issue with what we just heard from our Dutch colleague, and in fact what we've been hearing from Mario Draghi, and for a lot of people, I don't like the fact that we talk about competitiveness. We should be talking about productivity. We should be talking about improving the living standards of European citizens. We should be less obsessed with trying to catch up with the United States and much more focused about the positive agenda that exists in Europe to actually build on the price stability that the ECB is delivering, to deliver the structural reforms which will deliver productivity, which will then deliver improved living standards. That's what we should be focusing on. And it's just a slight difference in tone, but I think we're just a bit over-obsessed with what other people are doing than what we should be doing ourselves.
La question qu'on peut se poser, c'est comment...
Question we can ask ourselves is how can we foster growth, enabling to create jobs, to be more competitive and have a better productivity. That's the state today.
There are pension reforms that we should be doing because we're all going to live longer. Well, not many of us, but our children. But there's also, a few years ago, we were all talking about the employment opportunities from green technology. We were all talking about that. And somehow it's sort of disappeared from the conversation. We're now, okay, we're talking about defense. But let's not forget, there's lots of things that we could be doing. And the main thing, I think in the previous session, the president of the Eurogroup, Kyriakos Kyriakakis, talked about the need for political will. So on the monetary policy side, I can assure you the Governing Council has got the will, absolutely, and determination to deliver 2% inflation. So we just need political will to deliver the structural reforms that will improve our productivity.
If I may add,
Yeah.
I think
And
we have
after Joachim Nagel. Yeah. Come on, Karine, go on.
two quick points. One is, I think we have to be honest. Many of the supply shocks and the crises we face are partly of our own making, and especially the resilience and the agility to face the next crisis comes back to structural reforms. But the point I really wanted to make is, building on your point about Europe, we have so much going for us in Europe. We tend to forget that, and we have to fix it. We have to put Draghi, whatever you find of it, Draghi in place. We have to get the growth policies going. But we have a lot of industries that are doing really well, whether it's biotech, semicon, you name it. And most of all, we have the talent in Europe. We have a healthy, well-educated population that can bring us productivity growth that we need and that can bring us the stability that we need. It's also our Achilles heel, because if the politicians, I can say as a former politician, don't deliver, then we're going to see election outcome after election outcome that we don't like because they go to an extreme side. So we have to listen to the people, but it's also our strengths in Europe. And we have a lot going for us in Europe.
Ouais. Si les politiques ne font pas leur boulot.
If the politicians don't do their work, their job. I'll turn to you, Joachim Nagel. You wanted to react, but and there's one question I would have for your British colleague also. Donc,
follow on what Gabriel said. I think I heard it from him the first time, and he is absolutely right that often we are talking too much what is going on the other side of the pond. We should concentrate on ourselves. There's a lot we can do in Europe. And I saw a couple of while ago, I had a meeting with Mario Draghi. I didn't see the steam coming out of his ears, but I have a good understanding that he is impatient about what is going on and how fast it is going on. And my personal feeling is that we have to reconcile ourselves with the idea of Europe. Europe is a great idea. It is a success story. It was a peace project from the beginning. And I have to say it, at least for my country, we are so grateful to France that this could be kicked off 65 years ago, in the 60s, late 50s, that we are here and can discuss things. Europe is a great idea, but now we have to do the next steps. Is it the capital market union? Is it the banking union? Is it the fragmentation of our energy markets? I think it is so obvious what is in front of our plate, and now we have to do the next important steps, because Europe is such a beautiful continent. We have great people here. We have all what is necessary to trigger and boost growth, creating wealth for the sake of the people. But it is on us, it is not on others, it is on us. We are in the driver's seat. We have to do it.
J'ai envie de dire à qui vous vous adressez.
I feel, who are you talking to? Joachim Nagel. Because just do it, but who should we talk to? You? To politicians? To the European Commission? Who are you talking to?
Monetary policy statements. We are not just discussing rate hikes or lowering rates. In our monetary policy statement, you can find all these elements that are necessary to get there. And yes, what is our role? It is price stability, but also we are giving advice to politicians. We're giving them ideas, and they are in the driver's seat for sure. They have this legitimization to do it. It is their role. And I feel, and it's often like that, when you are in a crisis situation, and when you feel the pain in the neck, I think often this is kicking off certain developments, and I feel that this is definitely now the case. A lot of things are going on, they're going into the right direction, and I hope we can make Mario Draghi happy in 12 months.
Draghi, il n'est pas de la fumée qui sort de ses oreilles, pour reprendre l'expression de Karine, pas de vapeur, même si ça nous ferait un petit peu de bien. Juste alors, très rapidement et avant...
So very briefly before handing the floor to Andrew Bailey, should we expect to have a world where there's a higher growing inflation rate? We see there are successive geopolitical crisis that has an impact on the cost of energy, on raw materials. Are we going to be living in a country where inflation is king or queen or whatever? Nigel, do you want to answer, or Andrew after? Oui.
Joachim said it very clearly. It is our job to bring inflation back to 2%. We have to do that against the context of these repeated shocks. We're dealing with one at the moment.
Quoi qu'il en coûte. Okay.
Sorry? Yeah, yes. But look, our remit at the Bank of England is a 2% inflation target. But in that remit, we do have language which says that in the event of this sort of shock, the sort of shock we're going through at the moment with energy prices, our job is to take a judgment on what is the right course to bring inflation back to target. Because these shocks are the hardest ones to deal with, because they push inflation up and they push activity down. That's much harder. And that's what we're doing. I'm very frustrated because I really believe that we would have had inflation at 2.0 actually a month or so ago had this conflict not started, but it has. Inflation's now at 2.8. But our job is to bring it back. But we will bring it back in the way that actually is most sensible from the point of view of long-run price stability and not, frankly, damaging output where we don't have to damage output, but we still achieve the inflation target. That's a judgment, and that's the judgment we have to take.
Gabriel Maclouf sur cette question d'inflation.
Gabriel Maclouf on this issue of inflation, and Gabriel Maclouf and then Eric Lombard. Do we have to prepare ourselves to live in a world in a world where the inflation is influenced by geopolitical context?
We're now we are living and we are going to continue to live in a world of geopolitical shocks. At the moment, I think that is the right way to plan, because it's not obvious to me that things are just all going to revert to some time where everything was calm. So we have to, and there'll be two types of shocks. There will be genuine political shocks, but there'll also be, in my view, supply-side shocks like the energy one. We have to assume that is the world that we have to work within, and we therefore have to keep steady on what it is that we need to achieve, which is 2% inflation, and take the necessary decisions in that context to continue to deliver stability that the economy needs.
Eric Lombard.
Eric Lombard, oh, yes, 4 quick comments. I don't believe that the inflation is returning. It's not something we can hope for. It's not with inflation that we'll solve our problems, and will not happen, firstly, because big world central banks are independent, the European Central Bank, the ECB. But we had some good news from the US on the recent decisions of the Supreme Court that reasserted the conditions of the independence of the Fed. Which was contested by President Trump. So the Fed will be also in its mandate of monetary stability. Secondly, AI, with the operational efficiency it will deliver rapidly, it doesn't seem to be an inflationary factor, even though American GAFAs will try to play with their monopoly. So that's what we need, European AI. And thirdly, we are getting used to shocks like the Hormuz Strait. We're getting used to that, and we're becoming more independent. At the beginning of the Ukraine war, there was an inflation shock because we're buying gas from the Russians and from the Gulf countries, and we got organized to be more autonomous with renewable energies, the French nuclear program, and so on and so forth. For all these reasons, I don't think it will happen. And for the 4th point, it's my conclusion, the conclusion I had given, but I'd like to go back on it. Especially our Dutch friend said this, it's the structural policies that are needed to reestablish our public finances, to recover. Which is a lever that's essential to recover growth, and debt is a poison gift for our children. For this reason, we have to address it. And
Nigel, did you want?
I think, and it was perfectly said by the previous speaker, I think it is pretty obvious what is necessary on the fiscal side. And I think Germany, we did something this week. We agreed on a reform package. I think especially an important pension reform. I guess these are very important step forward to also bring some, let me say, consolidation in the way that we increase the probability for higher growth rates. And if you have higher growth rates, then you have higher returns. And this is very helpful when it comes to bring debt levels and also the fiscal deficit down. But again, I don't want to circumvent that question from the beginning. What can monetary policy do? Take the assumption in theory that maybe monetary policy would target certain bond rate levels. What is the right level that you should target? I think you bring yourself in a situation where you're being trapped. So it is, for good reason, it is like that we are doing our stuff. And this is the best, and I have to repeat myself here, the best what we can do for help the fiscal side to consolidate the budget.
Juste avant de vous passer la parole, Karine, je voudrais
Before I hand over to Karen, I'd just like to once again reformulate the question asked Jean Nickel. We've seen that the European Bank has increased its interest rates because there was inflation. A few days later, there was an agreement, in inverted commas, between the Americans and Iran. Straight away, the oil prices went down and inflation went down. We can see there's a reactivity because of these geopolitical crises much quicker than the horizon you have as central bankers. How can we adapt? How can you adapt to this?
Did in June was in a way without an alternative, because all the numbers forecasts we had in our June meeting, they were in a way convincing that even in the mildest scenario, inflation was too high. And yes, this retreat of the energy prices, oil prices, that came as a surprise. So many experts I spoke to, they said something different. But we shouldn't forget the whole situation is still very volatile. So we do not know if there is really a peace agreement coming. So we should be vigilant. we should be open, whatever might come, so keeping our optionalities. And I think this is the best what we can do, our meeting-to-meeting approach. So very pragmatic in a way, and then we can deal with the situation when the next meeting is there. We have then all the necessary data to come to a decision.
Et on en parlera demain matin.
We'll talk about that tomorrow morning here with Patrick Boyani, the president of Total. Karen Vengini, but you wanted to say something about inflation, I think. Yes.
I trust these three guys to deliver, and as a businesswoman as well, up on 2% inflation. That's independence and that's predictability. Let's not touch that. Independent central banks with one mandate, very important. 2, this is the time to act upon our structural reforms. Because else the next supply shock, whatever it's going to be, we're not going to make it through. So this is independence of energy, clean energy. This is investing in defense. This is getting our own batteries produced instead of in China. The third one about Europe, I think we've already said it, we've got so much going for it. But in order for Europe to really function well, and I can hardly believe I say this as a Dutch person, please, France and Germany, get a bromance going again. We need a strong Germany, we need a strong France, but we also need a strong relationship between the two leaders in your country. So whatever you can do there, you will help not only the bromance, but you will help the whole of Europe.
Oui, ah, vous voulez ajouter quelque chose? Allez-y.
You wanted to say something. Okay, Nigel.
What I can promise to you that I have an excellent relationship with my friend Emmanuel Monin. And maybe some of you know, or maybe do not know.
On va lui demander de nous rejoindre, hein, s'il veut bien.
We'll ask him to join us, if you like.
Please pass it on between Merz and Macron.
So in the Governing Council, we are sitting in alphabetical order. We are not sitting by the name of our nation. So we are sitting by, since you are there, we are sitting next to each other, and next to me on my left, my friend from Italy, Fabio Panetta. So this is a good coalition, I would say. Thank you very much.
Tiens, une question, ça sera après la...
One question after the conclusion from Jean-Paul in a minute. Just one question for the president of the Bundesbank. We've talked a lot about politics, French policy. There are a lot of candidates who are here. We had Sébastien Lecornu here yesterday, the Prime Minister, who gave quite an offensive speech. In the program of personalities who tend to be more on far left or far right, saying, yes, we have a very high level of debt, but perhaps we could ask the European Central Bank to buy back some of our debt. Then we won't have to pay back our debt. Is that something that makes you shiver with horror at the Bundesbank? Do you think they could ask that from the European Central Bank? Is that possible?
That now we have to talk about football. So I cross the fingers, sorry, Andrew, I cross the finger for the French team. Thank you very much.
Ah, ok, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. No, Jamal, you have 1 minute for your conclusion, no more, sorry. It's not easy. It's true that it was a panel with a majority of governors. And the other panelists were saying more or less the same thing. They agreed, saying it's not the fault of monetary policy, it's the fiscal policy which is at stake. You two both agree, so I also agree with that. So we don't change anything, everything stays the same, okay. No. Nevertheless, we are talking about communicating better about monetary policy, to communicate more effectively. This is certainly important. We've also talked about the horizon. This is also an important thing. We're talking about the lead times or... So I think that's something we can improve also. So the question about 2%, that is something thing which bothers me. Why is it that all of the banks, whatever the country is, everybody is looking for 2%? What is so magical about this, this magic figure of 2%? What is the optimal inflation rate? Are we certain that it's 2%? Let me end, just quickly, let me end. Gabriel Magnoff wants to say something, and we'll have to hand over to the next panel. Okay. We'll carry on next year then. Okay. It's 2%, and we don't have 5 hours to talk about it. Okay, we'll talk about football then. Archangel. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to the fiscalists, and thank you for listening.